Hey guys, so I'm going to try to recreate this throwback, nice 80s retro look. I'm going to try to recreate that and show you how I made it with all the different layers. It's been a while since I made it, so what I'm going to do is just sort of go through the folders that I have and all the layers that I have and what they're doing and how they kind of blend together. I'm going to try to recreate it in another document. So I'm just going to kind of go through layer by layer and show you how it's made up, and then maybe you can take some ideas from that and build your own. So this is really made up of, you have your main background. I'm just going to go through some of these. So there's a grid in here. There's these stars that are back here. Tons of grain, some rough textures, grungy textures. Then we have our main logo right there. Then we have this just glow that's kind of happening on top of the letters. And then we have some, more grain and some vignetting there, creating some, super grainy, almost like a VHS type of grain. And then some color adjustments that are adding to the 80s kind of distressed colored look. Okay, so let's just go through it and break it down layer by layer. So I'm going to make a new document, and I'll make this 1920 by 1080, and we're going to go through that. So the first one I have is just a pretty purple type gradient here. So to show you these layers by themselves, I'm going to duplicate them and send them to to that folder or to that new document. So I'm going to right click on that, go to duplicate layer, and I'm just telling it, hey, to send it to that document. Oops, send it to the document that I just opened, and we'll go right there. So now you can see this is a pretty basic purple gradient. So to make this, you can do it by using your gradient tool if you want, or for me, I like to just make a new layer. It can be any color, doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to just draw a random shape on it. Again, doesn't matter what the color is. Then I'm going to do a gradient on top of that. So I'm going to move this out of the way so I can see what those colors were. I'm going to double click on my rectangle and go to gradient overlay, and then I'm going to click on my gradient little tool there. Click on this little tab. And when I click on this tab, it should give me my eyedropper tool. So I'm going to use this as my darker color. So I'm going to come down here, click on that dark purple, and then I'm going to click on this other tab and click up here, and that should give me that light purple. So it's pretty subtle gradient, nothing too crazy. So that looks pretty good. Make sure all my settings are good. That seems fine. We can change our, that's fine there. Okay, so I'm just gonna slide this over. So now we have our nice background purple gradient. Go back to my main throwback. Here, this layer here is more of a overall glow over the top of the letter, so we'll come back to that in a bit. So then the next texture that's pretty important is this grainy looking speckled grungy texture, and there are tons and tons of textures out there. You just have to find the right one to work for you. So I'm going to hit OK and show you what this is made up of. Put this on top here. So if I turned all of the blending modes off, so right now I use the lighten and about 69–70%. So if I hit normal and bump that up, you can see the actual texture here. So blending of different random kind of light beams and speckles and little hairs and a lot of grain. So you can make this you could probably find tons of packs out there that has something like this, or make it from almost like just a piece of grungy paper. So for instance, I have found a paper texture here. I'm just going to drag that in, and this is a pretty standard grungy paper, and this is from like Pixabay or something. You can add a desaturation to that, and I'm going to do a clipping mask so that it just affects that layer. I'm just going to right click and do clipping mask here. So now this saturation just affects this layer. I can throw maybe a dark texture on top of that. It's kind of dark gray maybe. This is again just a colored layer. Make sure that's above the, oops. Make sure this is above that paper, and then I'm gonna do some blending modes on that. Somewhere around there, maybe even throw in a levels on that. And just, this is adjusting your black levels and your white levels to get, various colors there, various options. So again, you can try to recreate the one that I have, or find something very similar. It'll all create different looks, but doesn't mean you don't have to have it exactly like the one I have. But something super grainy, black and white, maybe some grunge on it, and you'll come up with something pretty nice. So That's what I would use for that. So let me go back here to lighten. And it was 69%. Okay. Now we'll go back here and let's see what else we have. I have another texture. This is a kind of a white grungy layer. My kind of go-to is just throw a bunch of textures on it till it looks cool. And that's maybe a bad way to go about it, but that's usually what I do. So this has a divide at 65%, and the original look is this white with some, you know, more grunge on it. So that was just one more layer on top of what I already had to give some more roughness over here. We'll go back here. So then the next thing I have up here is a grid. So this is the grid down here, the top and the bottom. So one thing that when I tried to recreate this a second ago, I realized I need the background to be white and my lines to be black, because I had this outer glow on the layer, and it's making this really cool horizon line on the top and the bottom, which really gives to me a nice 80s look. So it's kind of a happy accident. But if I was going to recreate this, you could do this one of two ways. You could go to Google and you could find, you know, free grid. You can use, you know, find one that's okay to use. Find with a white background and black lines. There's probably tons of options out here. But if you want to recreate it yourself, what you would do is I'm gonna use a shape layer. So I'm gonna click on my little rectangle tool over here, and I'm just gonna make a nice thin line. So something, I mean, pretty much as thin as you can make it, around like something like that. And we'll make it completely black. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this all the way to the side, somewhere around here. I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to slide this one all the way down here. Okay, so we'll call this first, and we'll call this last. You don't have to do this, but this is just for example's sake. So then I'm going to duplicate and put a lot more right here in the middle. So I'm going to duplicate doesn't matter which one, I'm just going to duplicate my first one, then I'm going to slide it over. Okay, so now what I want to do is do a perfect, or close to a perfect grid. So 1920 by 1080s, you know, 16 by 9 format. So I'm going to do 16 lines across, and then I can have those align and make a nice, you know, spread out evenly. So we already have 3 on here. So we have 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines. So we'll start there and say 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So now if I click on the first one and I hold down shift and click on the last one, it's selecting all of those. And I should be able to click on this little distribute button. I'm not sure what the actual name of this one is, but if I click on it, it'll separate those into nice even spaces. All right, so I'm just gonna group those together, Command G, and we'll call this grid. For the sake of time, if you want to make this perfect, you could do the same process, but then do 9 lines. So, you know, have up here going across horizontally. So you would just create 9 lines and then distribute those evenly, and you should have a perfect grid. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to duplicate this grid that we just made, and I'm going to hit Command T and rotate it, and then I'm just going to stretch it out. Okay, so it's pretty close. I'm just trying to make this a little bit more perfect here. It's not going to be your perfect grid, but for the sake of example, you'll get the picture. So I'm trying to get my lines pretty even, and that'll be close enough. All right, so now we have a grid. I'm going to throw a white layer behind it. Okay, put this below my grid. So now we have this nice little grid, and I'm going to group that together. Actually, I can just maybe select all of those and hit Command E, and it should flatten those into this grid layer. So the next thing I would do is change the perspective on it. So I'm going to hit Command T, and I get this this big box here, and now I need to adjust my perspective. So I'm going to click on my corner here. Actually, hang on, I need to right click and do perspective. And if you grab the corners, it starts stretching it out all weird. So we're trying to make it look like a floor. So again, you're just going to go really crazy with it. Let's see. it's gonna let me. I think I need to zoom out because I'm getting a little too far. There we go. Let's Command T. So I'm going to do perspective. Oop. And stretch this way out. Something like that. Let's see. It can be kind of wonky sometimes. I don't really use this perspective a lot, so it's messing around with it until it feels right. So let's start there and see what happens. So Command T. Oh boy, scale this down pretty far. All right, so it's not bad. I'm going to stretch this down some. Let's hit enter and see what we got here. So that's looking pretty good. So for example's sake, we'll just go with it. Back up just a little bit. Maybe space this out some more. Trying to get those corners covered up. So that looks pretty good. I want to make sure I have a line right there at the bottom. That looks. Let's go with that. All right. So that looks pretty solid. I think I see some other lines in there. I didn't think those would show up, but we can maybe erase those. You can see those. I don't know if you can see them on your screen, but these little black lines in here. I'm just gonna get rid of these really quick. Just erase those. Okay. So then I had a divide on it, and I believe I did an outer glow. So let's see what that does. Outer glow. So you get this little glow there. I don't know what my colors were, so let's go back and take a look. So 60% and 30%, and my outer glow was a bluish color with color dodge. All right, so I'm going to go to outer glow. It was a bluish color dodge, sort of a blue, and probably pretty subtle there. Something like that. This was like a 30%. Okay, so you get the idea. So then I think I just duplicated that and hit Command T and did a flip horizontal. Oh, sorry, flip vertical. Move that up to the top. Somewhere around there. All right, so now I have this nice 80s look going on. Close this down. So the next thing was some grain. This isn't really grain necessarily. It's more just like some specks in the background. You can see them right there. So you can make that with a brush. You could probably find a texture that has that. So if I had a brush on here, I would let me throw these into a folder so I can keep up with these. I'll call this grid. So then, yeah, it's probably isn't quite even. It's somewhere around there. So the specks were just kind of this, these little black specks. So I think I had B. I used my brush tool, and I had this kind of like I think it was like a debris type of brush, and I think I had a black for now. But then I threw a gradient overlay on that. So I go in here. We have this gradient overlay, which is just a pink and an orange, just a normal blend, and then an outer glow that's super subtle. So let me just duplicate this layer, save us some time here. So you can see it right here. So I'm just going to drag this down onto my new layer there. So it's turn this one off. So again, a very subtle glow, and this orange and pink happening on top of it. And let's see if it's turned down. It's all about the same. Okay. All right. Next we have the stars, and this is a. Let's throw this folder in there. You can find tons of free NASA images, you know, of stars and galaxies and all kinds of stuff. So for me, I threw this down here. I think it's somewhere around in here. Let's turn this one off. And let me show you what it looks like by itself. So I have an exclusion on it, but at normal percent, it looks like this. So really cloudy. Let me turn this off as well. So very, almost like a Lisa Frank painting or something, but super bright, bunch of clouds and stars and nebula and whatnot on top of that. So I added some clipping mask to try to get rid of some of the edges here. So yeah, enable this back. So super dark up top, or invisible really, and then blending mode with an exclusion. And it was, I don't remember what the percentage was, but something fairly low. Let's see, 40%. So pretty close. All right. Actually, shoot, I can turn this one off. There we go. So there's that. Now I have it nice and dark, so we'll eventually get to the bottom of how that's nice and dark. Then I have this bottom glow, which creates this nice green glow, and that might be for some of the color adjustments making that, but let's throw that over here. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Duplicate layer. So here it's a color dodge at 41%, so I'm gonna do normal, and on this is, so it's a really light blue glow, and so it was color dodge at 41. And so I threw that down here. So you can see that it's really just sort of a light blue, but once I started messing with some of the color modes and stuff, or adjustment layers, it turned this cool green color, which I really like. So we'll get to that in a bit. So now the Electoral Logo, let's talk about that real quick. I'm going to throw that over here, duplicate group. So my font choices are, let's go into the text folder. So my tagline is a sans serif EXB. I don't know where I found this, but started digging around, so I'm sure I have a link to it in my project file. All right, so let's see my font options. Let's click on that and see what pops up here. Yeah, sans serif EXB FLF. It's almost like a fat Futura substitute. And then we have a indelible font here and from DaFont, and that might be it. Yeah, that was it. Okay, so those two fonts are the ones that are making this up. So if we break this down, this is just a kind of an off-white color on the, I guess it has a gradient of super kind of an off-white yellowy discolored color there to make it look a little old. A drop shadow, so I did my drop shadow as a bright pink to kind of match this one up here. No blending modes or no you know, softness on it at all, to give it a sort of an extruded look, and that's just again pink with a little bit of distance on it. And then we have our let's see what the back is. Oh, that's the actual word back. So this I did individual letters just so I could place them where I wanted them, just to make it look nice and neat. But again, this was just a let's go to my character panel. I have some black text, and then I have some effects on it here, and I have a gradient overlay, which is this blue and white gradient, and then an outer glow on that as well. And those you know, just again sort of a light blue glow with a little bit of low opacity and pretty soft on the sides, to get some nice glow on that. Okay, so then I turn this down here, and then we have throw, which is a basic text layer. Again, I put that gradient, that same gradient on there. It's just this pink kind of blending to white, or a lighter pink gradient there. So you can see it's pretty. You can see that hard line sort of right in the middle there. So I didn't do a super large gradient, just enough to get it to where you can tell there's a pretty good gradient on there. And then nothing fancy on that one, just a normal gradient with an outer glow. So if I turn that off, let's see what happens. As you can see, it has this subtle glow. And then the drop shadow is a white, or I guess not white, but pretty light pink, Again, no size at all, to get that sort of extrusion. It's sort of a poor man's extrusion on this text. So just a quick way to get that look. Okay, so that's it for the throw, and then I have a texture on top of that. So if I turn that off, you can see that it adds this nice layer of gradient or noise on that. And that's the same texture I used there for that background, but you could find any sort of noise texture and throw that on there. And then I did a clipping mask to get that noise look. All right, so that covers the main text. Now I actually have some flares on there, so you can find tons of little flares, like little sun flares and stuff. But if you let me open up the this flares folder. So again, this is just some typical lens flare. So I'm going to go to normal, show you what it looks like. So pretty standard looking flare. So when you do a screen on that, it kind of gets rid of the black, and I did an opacity of 62%, and then can move those around to create this. What is going on with my brush tool? Here we go. So you can see there's that flare right there, but you can put that on some of your sections of your lettering, and it looks like it has these little glints all over it. So that makes for a nice retro look. Okay, so that really covers the entire group of the text. Now there's these triangles back here, and to make those I just did some polygon shapes. So I did go to my shape layer, go to polygon tool, and I told it I only wanted 3 sides up here. So then you can get these triangles, and I'm holding down, kind of getting it about where I want it, kind of an upside down triangle. And if I click on shift, it sort of locks that into nice and straight across. So I didn't have any kind of solid on there. I think I had a turn the fill off, and maybe the stroke was, let's say, like 30%. That's probably not right, but yeah, that's not right. So maybe let's go to 10, maybe 8, somewhere around there. And then on mine, I have a bevel and emboss to give it almost like a neon bulb vibe, and then an outer glow. So if I drag these effects to my new polygon, you can see it right there. Now the color on mine were pretty hot pink, so this stroke color would be a hot pink. Oops, something like that. So now you get this sort of neon glow looking thing going on. So again, this is an outer glow, just a pink outer glow, color dodge, pretty soft. And then the bevel and emboss adjustment. So pillow emboss, smooth, depth isn't too crazy, just enough to make it look like it's a round bulb. And then a few different settings here to you can mess with those to get it just right. So, so that was the look of the triangles. Then I have a couple back here that are a really dark pink to make it look like they're bulbs that are sort of turned off. So I just duplicated my polygon and scaled those down to be sort of even with the size of this triangle. So they're nice. They almost look like a big neon sign. Okay, so then let's see. Let's go back to our main one here. So now we have a logo glow, and you can see that here. We'll throw that over to our document. See what's causing that. And I think this is just close down some of these here. A lot of times I'll just take a normal layer, and this is just, it's a normal blue brush. So to make that, I just would make a new layer. If I can delete it. Turn this off. So to make that, I'm just making a new layer. Getting my brush tool, doing a simple basic brush, finding color that I like. So it was some sort of blue, and then I can kind of draw on there and do different color modes to get some various glowing colors. So it's just subtle, but it adds a nice look. So pretty simple technique there to get this little pop of light. So I have some grain and vignette, so we'll throw this over there. So in here I have a noise layer and then a vignette. So to make the noise layer, I would just make a new layer, just a dark color, doesn't really matter. Somewhere, you know, dark gray to black. I can rasterize that, so now I'll just have this black layer, and then I can go to filter and noise, add noise, and I think I bumped mine up pretty high. I think I did not monochromatic, so I got some color in there, something like that. I'd rather go high here and then back it down with an opacity, so we'll do something like that, and then do some blending modes to get that to start blending through, so you can see that nice noise layer. So the one I did was a lighten at 87%, sort of a dark gray, but that's where I got that one. And this, as far as the vignette goes, I usually just make a new layer, and then I take a brush tool. This is probably not the best way to do it, but take a dark color, whoops, make a nice big brush and sort of brush my corners, you know, like that. And then from there, I'll usually do some blending modes on that. So this one didn't have any blending modes, but you could go through and do various blending modes. And again, shift plus and minus can cycle through those blending modes. Okay, so that's a good way to make a nice little vignette. All right, so we're getting closer to the look of it. Now let's go take a look at the color adjustment layers. So I'll duplicate this and throw it into my new one. All right, so that really creates that final look. So to break those down, let's go through one by one. So I added a curves. I started to adjust the green a little bit, push that green up, and I think that maybe caused some of these greens to come through in that glow at the bottom. Pulled the RGB down a good bit to really kind of crush the blacks a bit. And then so if I go to the green, you can see it's been pushed way up, so you know it was down here, but sort of gets rid of some of that purple. So then I added a selective color, which I use all the time, and it really probably stayed. Let's take a look through some of these. Didn't mess with any yellows, didn't mess with any greens. It's probably all in the whites, neutrals, and blacks. Yep. So in the whites, nothing. Neutrals for sure. Messed with the yellow, so pushed up that yellow a good bit, and then I pushed up the blacks a little bit, and then in the black I turned the yellow down some, so that you can get some really cool color looks with selective color. I love selective color. I use it all the time. Okay. Uh-oh, lost my folder. Okay. So then, where did it go? Did it go in here? Oh, there it is. So then I did a color balance and just tweaked some of the options in here. And it's not like I know exactly what these do. I just try them out until they make a cool cool effect on the main look of the, you know, what I'm trying to go for. So I try a bunch of different color adjustment layers to see just what they do and how they affect my design, and then whenever it feels right, I just go with it. So so that's really about it. And then I have that one layer at the very bottom that we looked at, and again, this is just an extra glow behind the text, so I'm gonna throw this in here as well. So this isn't exactly like the original, but pretty close. So this is, again, same technique of making a new layer, and it is just a dark purple layer on top of that. It's pretty, it's got some opacity on it. So I threw that down here below the text, and it just makes a nice glow back there in the very back. So that's really about covers it. I hope it was helpful. I know this is sort of a weird way to go about this tutorial, but I just wanted to break it down and show you how it can be done with some simple layers, and doesn't have to be anything crazy fancy. But hopefully it helps. Let me know what you think, and maybe post what you create in the comments. So appreciate it. You guys have a good one. Talk to you later. Bye.